I don't think I've ever asked you where the name came from for the record.
It actually came close to the end of the record. It was one of the songs that Chris had brought in. He just said, that's going to be the name of the record. And I was like, oh, wow, great. You know, I mean, I didn't think anything of it. I love this. I love this song. I love the title. As the record was winding down, they came in with the photographs that had been taken for the album, and I got to see them. And I was like, oh, wow, that's actually really cool. And the way it sort of came together with the name, it had a vibe that I felt really encapsulated the album. But as far as I could see, it was sort of like, yeah, I like that name. We'll go with that. You know, some of the stuff that's on the album, the imagery is very surreal in places. You know, and I think it conveys more of a mood, or at least as much a mood as anything else. I guess after the fact, what Chris was going through emotionally, because I didn't really pick up on any of that when we worked together. It all kind of ties together in a completely different way. But obviously there's something very, very dark about the album, and there's something very dark about him.
So something you've got, which I find incredibly exciting, because the thing about Superunknown is it's not just an album full of incredible songs and amazing performances. It's also a leading, amazing sounding record, like huge drums. Everything jumped out of the speakers the first time you heard it. And the drums are, in any rock song, any rock album, paramount importance. They really do lay the foundation, literally, the foundation of the song. So you've got some recordings here of Matt playing, and tell us a little bit about that. This is you after you've selected tones, kits, tuned it, mic placement, all of that stuff?
It was pretty rigorous, yeah. I mean, we started out, obviously, finding the spot in the room where the drum kit sounded the best. And we wound up setting up 2 kits. One was a little bit more spot mic'd and the other one was more ambient. We just spent days setting up mics, moving them around, trying different drum heads, trying different kit parts, you know, selecting cymbals, and until we kind of arrived at the right combination. It's funny because there was actually a lot of friction as we went along. I don't think the band were prepared for me to be spending this much time getting a drum sound. And yeah, I mean, we spent the entire week pretty much getting this drum sound. Like it took 5+ days to do it. And by the end of five days, they were ready to kill me. And the engineer wasn't too happy either.
Really?
You know, yeah. But I was like, I had something really specific in mind. I knew what it was, and I wasn't going to stop until we arrived at that place. Jason Corsaro, by the way, was our engineer, who was, since he's no longer with us, one of the greatest engineers who ever lived. We had our differences on the record, but the record would not have sounded like this without him. He started with the mics a little bit more off the drums, like a way to get more tone. And I was like, no, we need more impact. So I kept having him move everything closer and closer. And he was kind of like, he didn't like that. Like he wanted them to kind of blossom more. And I was like, look, we'll get that from the mics that are more ambient, that are more proximity. But I need to get impact. Like that's of paramount importance. So we got the mics as close as we could possibly get them to the drums. The Sennheiser 421s on the toms. A lot of people poo-poo those mics. I happen to love them. And he was like, no. He was like, please, let's try these U87s. And I was like, okay, fine. You know, we put them up, and the U87 sounded so much better. But they were enormous. They were too big, and there was too much tone in them. And they stood out like a sore thumb from the rest of the kit. So I was like, we have to go back to the 421s. The 421s just sat perfectly in the overall matrix of what we had with the drum sounds. You know, we did a little bit of overhead miking with cymbals. And then Jason, who was really fighting me every step of the way at that point, was like, look, I just want to try something. He wanted to go for a 3 mic setup. over the kit with 267s. But instead of using the Glyn Johns thing, he would place them kind of equidistant from the snare overhead, ran them through a pair of Neve 2254Es. It sounded amazing with that and the U47 on the kick, but it still wasn't tight enough. And it also had too much of the cymbals. So I asked him, could you please tilt the capsules so that they're facing directly down at the snare, so actually away from the cymbals? And of course, Jason looked at me like I had three heads at that point. He was really upset, but we did it. And I said, look, we're going to put this into the mix. And he was like, oh. But it sounded amazing. It just sounded so much better. Having this mix of these two essentially different approaches to miking the drum kit. And obviously you're dealing with a tremendous amount of phasing at that point, you know, but it sounded great. You know, we made it work. I think that we brought some speakers in to amplify the bass drum just a little bit out in the room, which is something that I'd been doing for a while. Mm-hmm. Just to get the bass drum to speak more, because a lot of times with drummers, they tend to put so much of their energy into the upper part of their body, and there isn't enough of the bass drum. And I wanted to make sure there was as much bass drum as possible. So at the end of that time, the engineers frustrated, the band are like, but we have a drum sound. And I was like, okay, Matt, let's try. You know, we'd gone through heads as well. We tried different heads to see what the best ones were, which was another exercise in frustration for everyone else. For me, I was like a kid in the candy store at that point. But but we had about 7 snares, one of which was a Black Beauty. And there were 2 Keplinger snares, one of which was that pipe snare.
I was going to ask about Keplinger, because doesn't he on the album get a credit?
He was our drum tech, and he brought in that pipe drum. It was a prototype, actually, and that's the snare that we used on Black Hole Sun. Some of the drums that we have that's on the recording that you have that we're going to listen to, that's the full kit. And I think that is probably 3 of the snares that we selected. And after that was playback from the 2-inch, the first time that we actually heard what the drums sounded like coming off the tape. Well, you can hear things changing in some of the recordings, you know, because I was just sort of listening to how they hit the room. And in some cases, it's a little too roomy, so you sort of lose the attack of the drum. But I wasn't really thinking about that. I think there's 3 different segments with 3 different snare drums, that being one of them. And then the last bit is him playing, is what we recorded of him coming off tape. So it sounds slightly different. Yeah, and we went through a whole lot of experimenting with overbias and stuff like that to make sure that the playback was a significant improvement over what was coming over the monitors. I love Neves. I love APIs. I love A-range consoles. There's so many wonderful boards, but I prefer SSLs. And that's partly because I tend to supplement with my own pre's. In this case, I brought my 16 Neve 1057s into the studio. I discovered those earlier, I think in the year, working on a project at Southern Tracks in Atlanta. And like every other producer, I was like, I need 1073s because they didn't, and I saw in their studio menu, they didn't have any 1073s. And I'm like, what's up with this place? How can they not have 1073s? And I checked their rental menu and there was nothing there but these 16 Neve 1057s. And I was like, what the hell are those? So I get to Southern Tracks and I speak to the studio manager, Mike Clark. He's like, you got to try these. They're good. And I was like, I want 1073s. I don't know what these are. I've never heard of them. No one else I know has ever heard of them. So I want 1073s. And he looked at me with a little smile. I was like, just try them. And the next day they were there and we hooked up a U47 FET on a kick drum, opened the channel up. The drummer hit the bass drum, and both Jason and I, because he was engineering that session as well, were just like, huh? We'd never heard a bass drum sound like that before in our lives. I mean, it was just so fast and immediate and rich, and it just hit in exactly the right place. Perfect, So I was like, after I was done with that session, I went to the guy who owned him, this old guy named Tom Wright. And I was like, please let me rent these for this next project that I'm going to be working on. He's like, oh, sure. So he had a flight case built for him. He sent them up to me. And that's what we recorded the drums through on Superunknown.
Did you end up buying them?
I did. At the end of the project, I realized I couldn't live without them. So I called up Tom and I was like, Tom, what's it going to take to separate you from these modules? And he started laughing at me. He was like, you have no idea how many people have asked me the same question, but I'd sooner die than sell those modules to you or to anyone else, and that was it. And then several years later, he called me up. I think we should go to Kickstand next, because I think that was one of the first ones that we worked on. It's got it's got the drum track with some of the other instruments playing along in sort of like a lower level. That was the take that we selected. And it was actually the first recording that we did on the project.
Sound of tape starting up.
I love that. One of my favorite things. Isn't that great?
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. I mean, and it also shows how inventive Matt is as a drummer. Like, he's doing all these really cool little parts. And obviously you don't notice this when you're listening to the song, but if you break it down, there's so many cool little accents and things like that. Like, he just knows exactly what to do with the drums and do things that are really uncommon.
It's weird with it focused on the drums like that, with the scratch vocal and just a little bit of the guitar bleed and whatever. Almost sounds like surf rock. It had a completely different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just had this bounce.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't beat real human beings playing music.
No, no, it's true. And it's interesting because I mean, I was tempted to sort of to send an earlier take along so you could kind of compare the energy and see how, because there's obviously he's playing the exact same parts, it's the exact same song, but there's just really subtle differences in how he's playing, how much intensity he's putting into the performance, and how much it's grooving. And you can hear like early on, he's sort of like, he's kind of like rolling with it. I mean, obviously he's doing a fabulous job, but it doesn't have that kind of urgency. But when he got to this take, it was perfect. And there was a ninth take that we did as well, and it just didn't have that same kind of energy. So it was kind of like, okay, I think we've got what we need. It's wonderful to see that, to see the process take place. And as you're saying, that human element, because it's a person playing the kit, playing his instrument, doing the same exact thing a bunch of different times and different variations of that, and finding out which one's the best.
I'd never heard those guitars at the end being so Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Page, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. No, there's a lot of nuance in many of these guitar parts. Obviously, as you're hearing now throughout the whole record, but that was with guitars and percussion overdubbed. Yeah, and I think that we did these songs in groups of 4, so we'd kind of go soup to nuts with each group. So we'd start out, obviously we'd start to finish with everything, and then we'd move on to the next group of 4. So this was one of the earliest ones that was recorded that way.
I love the guitar parts and hearing it like so pushed in the mix. Well, presumably that's a rough from guitar tracking.
Yeah, actually, I think it might be post percussion, because I think
really?
the percussion was the last thing that anyone put on instrumentally before we went to the vocals.
Kickstand, you gotta lose, and I threw up. Yeah, kickstand, you got a juice to fill my cup. My mother said that it's alright. My mother said that that's the only life, so do it right. Do it
This is Kim's song, yes?
Ooh, I don't remember who actually wrote this. I think it might have been, I think it might have been Kim. That particular recording, I think I had a choice between that and one where the vocals a little bit more tucked. But I wanted to play this one for you because I wanted you to hear some of the nuances in the vocal. And as you can hear, it's pretty compressed. Me being, I guess, really naive about signal channels and stuff like that, I had this like crazy notion of stacking a whole bunch of compressors and a whole bunch of mic EQs together. So we had like 4 compressors and 4 equalizers in this particular chain to start out. This was at the beginning of the project, but I learned my lesson, but I had this idea in mind, right? Because like you're creating this music, this sonic presentation, which has to be this like wall of really dense sound with these really driving hard drums and these loud, these loud, full, rich guitars, and how are you going to get a voice? Like, even though Chris has got this really strong voice to poke out in the midst of this. So I was like, okay, it has to be hyper real. It has to be sort of beyond in a way. So there were a bunch of different aspects of his voice that I really wanted to feature. Obviously, there's like the air and the gravel up at the top, but there's also, and obviously there's a note and the tone of his voice, but there's also this really cool thing happening, and you can hear it very, very well in this recording. When he comes down at the end of a line, most of the time, he does this this exhalation, which I thought was like one of the sexiest things I'd ever heard a vocalist do, right? Because it's so visceral and it's so raw. And I was like, I need to be able to hear that thing when he's singing in that wall of sound, So we had to experiment a lot with trying to get all those different elements and levels of detail to be audible in the right way in the mix. And that took a little bit of time as well. But, you can hear it. You can hear it there in plain view now. I don't remember how he changed. I think it was like compressor, equalizer, something like that. Like it was just silly. Even sillier was the fact that I couldn't find a vocal mic that did the job as far as being able to preserve his voice. Because another thing that I wanted to do, I kind of set up these very interesting sort of hurdles for myself to clear. And one of them was that I needed his voice. I needed him right up on whatever microphone he was singing into. I could not have a microphone, out there. He had to be like, I had to have like proximity effect. And, most microphones, especially from a guy who's singing like that and that loud, can't handle that type of thing. So he went through upwards of like 20, 30 microphones. And we finally settled. I couldn't find one mic that could handle him for every single job. So we wound up using a U67 for when he was singing quietly, a U47 FET that had been modified by Klaus Heine for when he was singing hard. So that would have been the U47 FET right there that he was singing through. Later on, I realized that expecting him to kind of do a whole bunch of songs and sort of select like the quiet parts and, do the quiet parts and loud parts separately was it was asking too much. So we changed our setup later on.
What did you change to? Because I remember you telling me before when I interviewed you a few years ago that he blew out a lot of mics during this record.
When we went into the second batch of songs, that was when I had my epiphany that this like crazy setup with all the compressors and equalizers just wasn't going to cut it. So we went back into our, another mic check. And I started going for microphones that were more flat because I was noticing that the mics that had, character were the ones that were the most iffy with him. So I tried a Sanken CU41 and a B&K 4011 maybe, or 4006. But we wound up settling on a Neumann U87.
God bless them.
One of my least favorite mics in creation, but when it works, you gotta roll with it. And it sounded perfect. Like it could to a point, it could handle him singing up close on it until, as we said before, he started blowing out the diaphragms. But that happened a little bit later on. So we got a lot of mileage out of him. Unfortunately, Bad Animals had 5 of them.
Oh,
yeah. So we had kind of like we had them in rotation.
I've got to say, I've always found the 87 to just be the old favorite, the dependable. There you go. The old dependable. If you're not sure, you try, is it going to be tube? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? And you put an 87 up and you're like, you know what? Does the job. Maybe that makes them a little inspiring in some ways, but
yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah. No matter anything I say to the contrary, it is an excellent microphone and very dependable. You know what you're going to get in all cases.
So tell us a little bit about the Day I Tried to Live. Now, you have an original demo of this.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the songs that can't remember when Chris introduced it, but I think it was one of those things where, everyone was like, yep, okay, that's a good one. It didn't really go through any kind of vetting process or anything like that. It was just sort of like, yep, we're going to do that one. That's a good one. And there wasn't any crazy story about this. Everything went pretty hitch-free on it. But what's interesting is that it wound up being, when we were testing, when we were sending out mixes to find a mixer, it was the song that we sent to this guy, Scott Litt, because Matt had wanted Scott Litt to be the guy mixing the record. I mean, initially I kind of felt like Brendan, just because of what his standing was at that point, because I felt that the records he'd done had a certain aggression to them that I really, really liked. And I felt like it would suit this record a lot. So when Matt suggested Scott Litt, I was like, has he done anything like this? I mean, I just knew him really from REM. He's a sensational mixer, engineer, producer. There's no question about it. I just didn't think he was suited for it. But the mix will kind of tell the story. I mean, we can listen to it, I guess, in sequence, the demo and our rough, and then the mix.
absolutely superb guitar riff that is, and just
Right?
ah, I love that song because it's a bar of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it's a bar of 7, and then a bar of 4 and a bar of 4. And I always remember like hearing it for the first time and going, that's an odd meter, but it doesn't sound like an odd meter because it just rolls around so beautifully.
How those guys did that. I mean, they were just magicians with time signatures and tuning as well, and also with recording their own demos. You know, Chris was, as you can hear from that, it's not the best sounding demo by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a good sounding demo, and you can hear everything that's going on very clearly. And he did all that himself. He engineered everything himself in the basement of his house. Wow. You know, he played all the instruments himself because he was the band's drummer first. You know, he picked everything up as he went along. I mean, he was just a one-man song creation machine.
Him. That demo's entirely him.
Entirely him. Yeah. All the most of the demos that he made were all him.
Wow.
Yeah, no, he was absolutely sensationally talented. You know, I mean, I think people obviously know that about him, but you know, when you hear stuff like this, it really gives you a lot of insight into just how talented he actually was, and that he could write like that as well, and sing like that. Just amazing. Yeah.
I think you had told me that before, that you know he would make these full demos, but that's an absolutely superb demo. Yeah.
Yes, proof positive right there.
I love the fact that it's an odd meter timing, but like we're both saying, you don't really think about it. This reminds me of Ike Willis because we were working with him a few years ago, and Ike played with Zappa. And of course, you know, when you get to be close to anybody that worked with Zappa, you have to ask all the questions that you would ask. And so the first question I asked was like, how the heck did you just get through a set with Zappa, with like every other song having like, you know, 5 different tempo and key changes and time signatures? And he goes, none of us ever thought in time signatures. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, it's just riffs. It's a lot of riffs. And I think that's what Kim Thayil was saying about this song. I remember seeing a quote. It's like, we didn't realize until afterwards that people told them, oh, by the way, it's in a different time signature. Like, is it? What an absolutely superb demo, played completely by Chris on his own. What's next in the process? Do what do we have next? Do we have a rough or something we can listen to?
The next is a rough of the song, which is I would say at that point it would have been 100% complete with lead vocal. And it just illustrates where the song was at when we got it from soup to nuts.
What a great
Yep.
evolution from the demo to that.
Yeah, it really, it definitely stepped up the way it needed to. And I was wrong. This one obviously does not have the slide guitar part on it. But you get to see how the rest of the song interacts with the vocal. And yeah, it's just more driving. There's more intensity to it. And obviously he stepped up his game massively in terms of vocal performance.
The thing that struck me is it reminded me, because I remember this coming out as a single, obviously, clearly. And it reminded me of just how the business was so different in the mid-90s, that this was the second single, Spoon Man being the first, then this is the second. And we don't get the big mega monster hit until the third single. It was like back in the days where, you know, there was kind of here's his taste of the album. We'll put Spoon Man out.
Yeah.
And here it's like a driving, and then it was always like coming out with like a rock song. He wanted like a rock song. And this is like a great rock riff, you know, and then the mega hit, you know. Nowadays, nobody would even take the risk, would they? They would just be like, put the hit out, the hit out now, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it's all about the initial engagement. After that, like the next week is going to be irrelevant, really, because most of your engagement will probably drop off by then. You know, people don't think that they have anything that has any kind of legs or longevity at this point. But yeah, I mean, back in those days, when you had a record and you knew it was great, there was a whole strategy that went into it. And it was like, yeah, if you've got at least one song on the record that's a really good song, and then another song that's absolutely great, or a bunch of songs that are really good that could be in any position to set up the really great song, that's how you would go. And the record company would spend all the rest of their time promoting the heck out of the band, putting them on tour, having them be on different TV shows and stuff like that. Like they really put so much effort into it. It really was an art form as well. And you could tell that they worked very, very hard to be able to give the record longevity, but also so that their artists could have longevity as well, so they'd have a career.
Exactly. And for a fan, not even if you didn't even know the band, it's how you got to know the band. They kind of trickled out stuff and let you discover it. And it was, I don't know, I remember being signed and labels talking us through the process of a voyage of discovery. And yeah, it was so much smarter than what we deal with now.
Yeah, it was a lot smarter. It's, you know, but again, if you see art as something that's got no inherent intrinsic value beyond what it is as a commodity, of course you're just going to throw it out there and like, well, the right people will discover it. You know, the people in this market will find it out, and there is no art, but also there's really no synchronicity or relationship between, I guess, I suppose like if you're at a high enough level in a record company as an artist, then, you know, sure, there must be. But for most other artists, it's kind of like, you know, you have an A&R guy, you might meet the head of the company once, but that's really about it.
Wasn't surprised at Kim's guitar playing and how that brought it up. The drums obviously was just like, wow, it was just driving it and huge. Chris's vocal, as we were just talking about, was phenomenal. Actually, the biggest change for me that I think I hadn't really anticipated was the bass playing being so tough. It's just like, and I remember seeing Soundgarden. I never stood next to Ben, but my guess is he's like about 6'4". Is he stupidly tall? He always just kind of
pretty tall.
Pretty tall. Okay, good. And and the way he plays is just really commanding. It just, it added a toughness to the track.
Ben, like I think a lot of bass players in a lot of bands, always winds up being the unsung hero. He just brought an element to the band that obviously they were phenomenal before with Hero, who was their original. I think he was the original bassist. But Ben brought this intensity, and he also came up with some really cool bass parts. You just wouldn't have expected, like on Fell on Black Days, which I didn't include here. On the first chorus, he plays this really cool repeating atonal part, which kind of clashes against the vocal. And it's the kind of thing that you would think, oh, this is like the bass is completely calling attention to itself. But it works. It's brilliant. It's like a counter melodic part that's really, it sort of establishes its own, I guess, identity, because it's not playing with any of the roots, but it doesn't take away from the vocal. I mean, the fact that you could do something like that as an instrumentalist in a band is, to me, is remarkable. And I don't think there are very many people that could do something like that. I think I mean, each one of these guys had a very, very important role in the band, but without him, this record certainly wouldn't have been anything like it is.
I'm glad you said that, because live, he always was one of the most powerful things coming off the stage. And definitely that bass player thing of connecting the raw power of Matt with Kim, and just like, yeah, phenomenal. Plus, frankly, it was so much fun to watch on stage, because he would just kind of traverse the whole stage while everybody else is kind of standing, like, be in and out of everybody. And
yep,
it was a huge step up. Everything else, I suppose, I was anticipating. I was expecting the guitars to come up. I was expecting the drums and the energy, and of course Chris to deliver. But I didn't realize. I was like, oh wow, no, that bass just like boom pushes everybody into gear. Phenomenal.
Yeah, his pocket is phenomenal. Also, like he just instinctively knows exactly where to put the bass to make the drums feel like they're pushing that much further ahead, and it makes an even larger pocket for the vocals and the guitarist to sit in.
Let's give a listen to Scott Litt's mix of this song. I mean, I can tell you what I felt. What did you? What's your gut? What was your reaction when you heard that?
I was used to hearing the record a certain way at that point, and I had certain expectations for it. And again, like everything is presented really nicely in that mix. You can hear everything, but it doesn't relate to the record that we were trying to make, or at least conceptually the record that I felt this needed to be. So to me, when I heard that mix, I was like, that's really not it. There's an immediacy that's lacking in it. And part of that immediacy comes from the transient response of instruments like the drums. They're a little bit more muted, like the leading edge of the transient response of like the drums is, well, I mean, it's almost completely gone if you compare that to the earlier rough mix. And that to me was a really like a defining aspect of the recording. And without it, it just lost so much energy for me. It didn't have the same kind of impact. I mean, there are also things that he did with like ambiences and stuff like that, which were, I'd say, very much of the time, and the ambient effects on the vocals and stuff like that, which really I felt kind of separated them more from one another and made them less kind of, I guess, coalesced into the mix. And I didn't care for it, Again, I think Scott did a wonderful job. It just wasn't appropriate for this record.
For me, and I haven't gone back and listened to the final version that Brendan did, I really was quite surprised, pleasantly surprised, and didn't expect the vocal in the first verse to be quite so in your face and enveloping, and that kind of John Lennon, double tracking sound. And that wasn't something I was used to. And I was sort of enjoying it. I was loving the guitars, they're a little bit lighter than I remembered, but in the verses and stuff. I think the thing that the biggest thing for me was when it went to, it just kind of it kept at the same level. There was no dynamics. There was no like, we're rocking out. It was all very subdued's a strong word, because again, you're right, Scott Litt's made some of the best selling records ever. It was cautious, a little bit cautious. There you go. That's probably a way. That's a
wonderful word to use in this particular instance. And yeah, I would agree with that. The element of dynamics is such an important one in all of these songs. And frankly, it's an element that's important in all music. And not just in terms of sort of like tiering stuff so that it kind of goes like this, and then it goes like that, where everything's very linear, which is how I think a lot of people define dynamics now. But in a record like this, in some of these songs, there are these gradual sort of like, levels where things escalate. They don't have to all happen all at once. Like things are sort of taking place in the background that you're not necessarily conscious of, that are leading you someplace. If you don't have that, if everything fundamentally kind of stays there, or when it gets there after having been there, it doesn't really go anywhere else, it's not that exciting. You don't have any surprises. And it doesn't help the narrative. It doesn't help fuel the direction that the song needs and ultimately wants to go in. That journey is part of the arc of the song, is part of what makes a song so interesting. And having it in a piece of music like that is as much as the performances, as much as the sonics, it's got to be there. And everything has to kind of support that. Everything has to work together. And if it doesn't, it's just not as effective.
What is the oldest of all of the versions of the song that we have to listen to? Where can we start is what I'm asking.
Black Hole Sun?
Yep.
That has the demo. I put the demo in.
This is Chris's demo with Chris playing everything, yes?
Once again, this is Chris in his little home studio, engineering and producing, performing, writing, everything, the whole 9 yards.
Beneath the black, the sky looks dim. Call my name through the green, and I'll hear you scream again. Black hole sun, won't you come? Wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come? Stuttering, cold and damp, still warring, tired friend. Times are gone, sometimes far too long for snakes. In my shoes, a walking snake. In my youth, I played everything. Everyone seems like you anymore. Black hole sun, won't you come? Wash away the rain.
What did you think when you heard that for the first time?
The tape that this song came on was the result, or I should say it was the response to a conversation that Chris and I had had a few weeks prior, where I was really trying to, I felt that a lot of the stuff that he'd been sending me prior to this was really kind of going out into the weeds a little bit. It wasn't as exciting as I felt that it needed to be. And it really felt like almost second-rate Soundgarden, like way below what I felt like what he was capable of. And I really encouraged him to start working towards music that felt more like what he would want to hear, as opposed to what he felt someone else who was following him might want to hear. So this tape shows up in the mail. I'm terrified because I'd had this like really, really deep conversation with Chris. And I was kind of like, if this doesn't go right, like, I don't know what else to do. Like, we could be, I may have to just say to this guy, well, that's good, and kind of just hope everything works out okay. I mean, I think it would have been a really good record in spite of that, but, I'd really kind of put him on the spot at that point, and I played every card that I had. So this tape sort of symbolized everything in a way. Yeah, I know, right? The first song on it fell on Black Days. And the moment I started listening to it, I was like, oh God, this is it. This is great. And the second song was another piece that we didn't wind up putting on the record. The third was called Tighter and Tighter, which I really liked, but they wound up holding that until the following record. And then the last song was this song. And from the moment that I heard those chords, or those arpeggios, I was just like, what is this? It just absolutely demolished me. I'd never heard anything like it before. It stunned me.
Now they're missing the high note of the arpeggio. Was that something he just kind of developed by the time you came in to track it, or he's playing the intro riff very slightly differently?
I don't think that he really thought that he was doing anything different. Nothing really changed in anyone's mind, apart from like drum parts, because obviously what he's playing on this demo is somewhat different than what Matt did. But overall, it just sort of migrated pretty well into the studio. And I think anything missing would have been pretty subtle.
Matt obviously really elevated it. I was intrigued though, because I didn't know. I was thinking, the bow down, down, down. When that part came in, I was thinking, oh, did the band add that? I was waiting for that to happen. I wasn't sure, and it's all there. Every single part.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, he wrote the whole thing. It just came right out of him. It's funny though, because I remember when I met with the band and we talked about it, I just happened to mention, I'm not that crazy about that bridge section that, where it changes. And they all looked at me like, no, like that. I think I said something like, maybe you guys could come up with something different. And they were like, no way. Like they got really angry. And I was kind of like, I think I should keep my mouth shut. As it turned out, they were right. I mean, it's such a high point in the song, really. It's a wonderful, wonderful part.
It's such a band part. That's why I was wondering whether it was going to be in the demo. Because he did it. Yeah, it sounds like Geisinger comes in with a guitar part and a song, and then the band add their elements. Well, he already did it for them. He added the band elements.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think he could really think like that because he could play all the instruments. So he had all the perspectives that he needed to be able to do something like that. The next one, I think, is going to be an alternate vocal take.
Ah, okay.
And it's interesting because this was the first time that Chris hit the song. Obviously, expectations were extremely high. What we would do was we had a system where I realized early on that Chris didn't like being in the large recording studio all by himself, and seeing people on the other side of the glass, and knowing that people were kind of commenting about him and assessing his performance. And I think he sort of felt like he was a bug under in a specimen jar. So I decided, all right, this guy has recorded his own demos. He knows how to handle that kind of thing. So we're going to set him up in the studio and we're going to leave. And he'll do all the work. So we showed him how to run the machine, how to change tracks on the patch bay, how to arm and disarm tracks on the multi-track. And we're just like, we set the microphone up so it was out of phase with the near field. So he didn't have to sing with headphones on anymore. Everything was perfect. Actually, we wound up with less bleed in that setup than we had with headphones. So he was so happy not having to wear cans. Everything was fine. And we're like, go to town. I just told him, look, do 6 to 8 passes. When you're done, when you feel like you've hit it, come get me. We'll sit down and listen to it, and we'll take it from there. So he did that. I came up and started listening to the tracks. And I just found that it was better if I did the vocal comps, because my communication with Jason in that whole thing, it got kind of garbled, and he would move things around that I didn't want him to. So in the end, I was like, look, let me do it. It'll be a lot quicker. So I did all the vocal comps, and I'd spend, I don't know, it'd take like 2-3 hours to do that. And then Chris would come back in, we'd listen to the finished product. I did this comp. He came back in when it was done. He just looked at me. He was like, nope, that's not it. And I was like, wow. I mean, he was right, as you'll see when you listen to it. But I was just so impressed that an artist could be that brutal, but at the same time, just sort of like lay it on the line and be like, nope, it's not good enough.
Yeah, that is incredibly refreshing. I agree. I often feel like when I'm comping a vocal, an artist is always wanting me to make something that they didn't do. When an artist is very self-effacing and they know for real where the emotional moments are, it's incredibly refreshing, because a lot of the time it's more about like, oh, I hit this note, I hit that note, and that's nice and that's good and that's great, but where's the emotional content that you can connect with? And an artist that knows how to find that and knows where it is and understands that in himself is a rare thing, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's good that it's cool that you use the word connect, because that's essentially what he has to do. That's the first level of connection. I think he knew right away when he listened back to that first pass that he hadn't connected at all, that there wasn't that there. And of course, if he's not connecting with it, us as listeners, we're not going to connect with it either. So it was pretty obvious that feedback loop wasn't taking place.
No one knows.
And so that was the first comp.
That was the first comp, yeah. And you can really hear the difference, you know. It's funny, like, and with such a great singer too, to actually have a sense that they're not really present while they're singing. And I'm not saying anything bad toward Chris, because Chris got it when he heard it. He was like, no, he absolutely despised that vocal performance. He knew. It just doesn't feel like it's connecting with the song at all.
I think the first verse was, there was a couple of words I liked that were very personal, but it felt a little kind of lackadaisical. Like it wasn't, just a little bit too much like this kind of, almost distracted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Not connected with the song, not really locked into it at all. And of course, the version that we know is a whole different thing. I think it's great that he did this first time out, because it really gave him, I'd say, like a context of what he needed, how much further he needed to go, you know. So he already knew what the song sounded like when the vocal wasn't right on it. So he had to go in and just knock it out of the park, which obviously he did.
And the other part that didn't work for me was like when he came back in on that last chorus, like the timing was really strange.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a miss all the way around.
So what's the second vocal comp that you have?
Well, it's the one that we all know.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So he went back and resung it, another 6 or 8 times?
He went back and he sung it another 6 times. When I started listening to the vocal performances as I was comping it, I was like, oh yeah, he nailed it, you know. And then when he came back in and listened to the finished version, he just looked at me and was like, yeah, that's it.
Easy.
You know, it was very obvious. You could tell right away. I mean, Chris, when he's on, there really was no one like him. Obviously. What was cool is that for a lot of the backgrounds, I was able to salvage some of the tracks from the earlier vocal performance and kind of use them as doubles in a few spots.
I think I'd still like to listen to it. The comp, the second comp.
That's why it's there.
Great. Just to be able to hear it go from one to another. The same rough mix on the drums and everything?
It's a little different, you know. It was a different day. You know, all the balances change from moment to moment.
Totally understand. The other thing I felt was like, God, the drums on this song are so good. That's like, you know, how we noticed going back to a previous song, we were going, well, the bass was the thing that really elevated everything. Well, in this song, God, the drums just like, oh. I love how he's got that Bonham kick when he kind of goes, duh, duh. It's almost like he leaves that second kick so late. It just feels like, it was like you're being punched in the stomach.
Yeah, right. Once again, Matt Cameron for the win. His parts were just so absolutely perfect for these songs. He knew exactly what to do.
Face lies the snake in the sun. In my disgrace, boiling heat, summer stench. Neath the black, the sky looks dead. Call my name through the cream, and I'll hear you scream again. Black hole sun, won't you come? Wash away the rain. Black hole sun, won't you come? Won't you come?
About to go into Helter Skelter then. Let's get to the
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. There's nothing I don't love about that. I'd have been happy with that mix. As wrong as it was wrong in all the right ways. It was so... when Kim's solo comes in, it's so obscenely loud and so obscenely good. Everybody's on their A game in that song. Everybody's.
Yeah, everyone's on their A game there. And it's amazing how Chris was able to just completely like do a 180 with that vocal performance. It's amazing how like the tonality of his voice is so different there too. He's really present. He's focused, like he's right there singing at you. Like you're completely engrossed in what he's doing. There isn't one note that's out of place in that vocal performance anywhere. And it's still one of my favorite vocals I've ever heard.
What an incredible record to be part of. I mean, you must be pinching yourself looking back at it now. 30 years later, my friend. 30 years.
Yeah. No, when I listen back to some of this stuff, I mean, I can remember being involved in it somehow, but like how did that, from a logical standpoint, it's so difficult for me to get my head around the idea that we all kind of, I guess, collided at this one unique point in space to do this thing, and everything just came together the way it did. My gosh. It still blows my mind, to listen back to this. I can remember doing it, but I just can't remember the thought process that went into it. I mean, I can remember bits and pieces here and there, but it still is amazing to me that with all the various ingredients, we came up with that, and that these guys wrote this amazing music and were able to pull it off in that way.
And 10 years before that 11 years before that, you were synth guy working with Herbie Hancock.
Yeah, even more unlikely, I know.
What an absolutely... I mean, all the best producers in the world, of which you are one, all share one thing in common: diversity, flexibility, the ability to morph from one genre to another. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are guys and girls that have a style and a thing they do. But I do remember reading something with Chris years ago, the producers that the label had suggested to them were fine and dandy, and they all thought they were great, but they all felt like they all had a style, and they were going to be like, yes, you fit in my style. But they felt like with you, you weren't bringing a one way of working. And that's...
Yeah, it was really funny how that worked out in the end, though, because the way that we wound up working, I think, was so objectionable to them. I think that they wanted to make a really quick record on this one. And this required so much focus, and it required so much effort. And, I think that they were at a place in their careers where they didn't really enjoy that so much. I'm glad they let me hang on with them for the ride. I'm glad that we were able to do it together, and I am so proud of these guys for the job that they did, and I'm so grateful to have been a participant in it.
Well, as I say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. This was a platinum record where I grew up, and a 6 times platinum record in the US. I mean, hugely successful for many, many reasons. Having you at the helm was a big part of it. So thanks ever so much for sharing this with us. It's been amazing.
I'm glad, and I hope that everyone enjoys it.
They will. This has been amazing. Thank you, Michael. There will be a link down below for what Michael was talking about earlier on, which is, if you want him to work on your productions, there is a way you can get to him and do that, which I think would be incredibly important to do. I would highly recommend it. Like I said, he's in my top 2 or 3 greatest producers of all time. And if I was making a record, he'd be at the helm.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Warren.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Adios and tschüss. Ciao.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.